Evening, good evening, good evening. You are listening to Huddle Talk with Dr. Hutch here on 88.5 FM in stereo. This is the station that your entire family can listen to. And we have a special guest tonight, and I think you ought to tell people to listen to this show. Matter of fact, if you're near Facebook, go right now to Voice of MSCS. Voice of MSCS. And then for those of you who follow me on my Facebook page, I just posted it to my Facebook page. So if you forget all that, you can go to Noel Hutchinson. You can go to Voice of, I need to look at this again. See, old folk get amnesia. You like that, I know. Voice of MSCS. All right. We're going to have a wonderful show. But before we get to that, this is Huddle Talk with Dr. Hutch. And what we try to do here, we don't bash anybody. We don't incite foolishness. We look at a plan and we figure out how to execute a plan. You know what a huddle is. You're going to see it this weekend when you look at all the NFL playoff games. You're going to see it at the timeouts of a basketball game. The team huddles together, and then they get a plan, and then they execute the plan. We are the community. And as I've told y'all before, Memphis has some great challenges. But I got some news for you. The cavalry ain't coming. Superman ain't coming. Batman and Robin are fat and retired. They ain't coming. It's up to us to fix this thing. U.S., us. And so a lot of the shows that we've done since I've been back on the air here have been centered around that, and this show especially is centered around that. Now, before I introduce my guest, some of y'all know who it is. Let me just do some basic stuff. Some of you are trying to figure out, who is this guy? I don't know him. Well, if you want to know more about me, go to my website, noelhutchinson.com, noelhutchinson.com, noelhutchinson.com. Here's how you spell it, NOELHUTCHINSON.com. I know. Somebody said that was too fast, although some of my friends said we've never accused you of talking fast. But we're going to slow it down. Somebody's pencil broke in the back. I don't know why you're still using a pencil. That's another issue. Here it is. NOEL. Got that part? HUTCH. Got that part? INSON.com. All right. That's enough of that. I wear several hats, but you don't have to worry about the hats I wear. What I want you to do now is prepare for this marvelous interview. I am honored, 88.5 is honored, to have with us Interim Police Chief C.J. Davis. Welcome to Huddle Talk with Dr. Hutch.
Thank you, Dr. Hutch. It's good to be here. Thank you.
It is my great honor and pleasure. Now, for those of you who don't know who she is, well, first of all, she and I had conversation back in October. We were planning for her. Okay, thank you for that. We had conversation in October. We were planning for this time, and some things happened, so it's interesting that we're meeting around now. But now there's a couple of things that need to be said before I get deep into the interview. There are those of you, because, it has, and we're going to speak to it a little bit. It has been controversial in terms of her being reappointed as the police chief. And you saw what our mayor did. He eventually said, look, we're going to give her the title of interim. We have too much business to take care of to focus on this. So let's make her interim and we're going to move on. So that's where we are right now. But you have this faction, that faction, the other faction. We don't bash people on this station. We don't bash people on this show. So I want you to be clear. If you are tuning in just praying for me to beat her up, you're listening to the wrong interview. Although, and I told her this in advance, I am going to ask you a couple of questions because we owe it to the listeners to ask some questions. Because there are some people in Memphis that are uninformed. They really don't know what's going on. They haven't heard from you, Chief Davis. And so they're forming all of these opinions, and people are saying, I don't like this, I don't like that. So here is my basic question. And I guess this question's going to serve for the naysayers, the yes sayers, whoever's saying. And it's for the every man and every woman, too. Those who don't get a chance to go to the meetings, they barely get a chance to listen to the news, and they're hearing all of this stuff. Real basic question. Why should we as the citizens trust you? Real basic question.
That is a a basic question. It's a good question. It's a serious question because, any police chief needs to feel like they're trusted. I've been in this business for a long time, and not as a chief, but just as a law enforcement professional. And one thing that I have always been proud of is that I worked for an organization and organizations where I felt like as a police professional, I could be trusted. When you have the right heart for this business, because this isn't easy work, you have to have a heart for community, a heart for people, and your focus is not just on the men and women that work with you and making sure that they have what they need to do a good job. Your focus is on your customers. What is what is it that the community wants from our police department? And I've heard from my community. I've heard from my community loud and clear on a number of different occasions, going to community meetings, and they want to see our officers out on the street more, out of their cars, and having relationships with people. Some of them do that. But as a police chief, in order for us to build trust, it can't be just me establishing relationships in the community. Community policing and trust has to be baked into the police department. It has to be part of who we are as an organization and ensuring that every officer on our force is part of ensuring that that thing is done. And so in doing that, you got to do a real deep dive into the department and really assess, the toolkit. What am I working with? How much training have my people had? How much community engagement? If we say community engagement is important, how many resources do we afford towards that? We used to have coax. Coax went away because of budgetary reasons.
Yeah.
But we still say community policing is important. Crime reduction is important. Community policing is important. But we put more money into enforcement than we do into community engagement. So I'm working to switch that and change that and ensure that we have just as much prevention as we do enforcement. So trust, I believe, has a lot to do with a person's heart. You know, where is your heart? What is your intent? Not just, for a role or a title, because I'm working now because I want to work, not because I have to work. This is, I'm retired and I still contribute to the industry, not just in Memphis, but on a national stage. I sit on boards. I contribute because people want to see change in law enforcement. And there are not a lot of law enforcement leaders that are about trying to make those kind of changes. And so, as a person that is embedded in the community and understand the needs of our community, understand that poverty is an issue in our community, that substance abuse is an issue in our community, that domestic violence, community violence, all of the different types of issues that we have, they disproportionately affect our community.
Exactly.
And so you have to have a heart for the people and for our children. My officers will tell you, I don't pass children without stopping and hugging and giving time to them, because I believe that every encounter with young people, it's an impression that is a lasting
So
impression.
that's the mother in you that helps you to make that connection.
And not just with young people in the community. That's the mother in me, even with my officers.
I
and
got you.
and I have that kind of relationship with them, that level of concern that we want to make sure that they're healthy and fit and ready to do this job because this is serious work. But do it in a way that we call procedurally just. Do it in a way where you're not mistreating or offending. I get more courtesy complaints than anything. You know, people would think it's use of force and those kind of things. Sometimes it's just how you talk to people.
Exactly.
And so, you know, when you ask about trust, I'm always thinking in terms of what if that was my mother that this officer pulled over, or my daughter, or my child? I'm always thinking in terms of how would I want that officer to interact with them. So I have personalized my work. It's more than just, you know, a everyday grind. I'm very passionate about it. You know, my staff will tell you, Chief, you care too much sometimes. But I do care. And people would think that maybe a person who comes from someplace else couldn't care about a community that looks just like the one that I left in Atlanta. Why can't I care? Most of the people in that community were strangers to me. The people in Memphis, a lot of them are strangers to me. But as a people, as a person that cares about African American communities, minority communities, and vulnerable communities, you know, I think my work here is just as important as anybody else could make it important.
Agreed. And thank you for that answer, especially when you consider that almost 30% of our population is under the poverty rate.
Yes, it
When
is.
you consider that, I think the number is either 90 or 95, maybe 82, I can't remember, it's a high number of our young people in this school system are either on free or reduced school lunch.
Yes.
So to really emphasize community policing and that side of it is a good thing. So I appreciate that. Two more questions in this lane, and then I'm through with this lane. We need to look for the future. Now, how should we view this whole? I don't know if I even need to call it a controversy about the ordinances that were passed, and then we find out from our former mayor. And I'm just gonna be real, not because you're sitting here.
Yeah.
I didn't appreciate how that was done, because you shouldn't find out about that as a citizen or even as a police chief at the 11th hour. I didn't appreciate that.
Right.
But how should we look at this as a citizen?
Well, you know, I think citizens should be as perplexed as I was. I mean, if you were watching what occurred, you know, it was almost like I was dreaming. When somebody tells me that I didn't do something that I know I did do. And so, and not just that, people think because a police chief works in an administration, the police chief does everything that the administration does. The police chief gets the power to do his or her job through the state and the sworn powers that are invested in me. So when I see something that has to happen, as a police chief, I do it. There is no flexibility about ordinances or laws where I can say, well, I like that one and we gonna do that, and I don't like that one and we not gonna do that. So once that ordinance passed, it was law. Just like any other ordinance, whether it was signed off on or not. We began to do the work, and some of it was quite involved, and it was easy to be able to provide supporting proof about the work that was done. But it did reveal the level of distrust that we've got to work on, you know, as a department. That if I say I have proof, and I said it earlier, the truth is easy to find. A lie is hard to find.
Yeah.
So the truth is still sitting right there on my desk and in the hands of people who I've provided it to. The dashboard that we started working on, you can't just throw together a dashboard overnight. That dashboard is thousands and thousands of pieces of data that we've been working on for the year 2018 all the way up to present, so that we could have a comprehensive dashboard that the ordinance said that they wanted us to have. So my staff started working on that last summer. We changed policies as relates to undercover cars, and then the pretextual piece, that was the part that was complex for us, mainly because our city law department was trying to ensure that the state law and the city ordinance was congruent and that we weren't sending mixed messages to our officers. So we began to at least start having conversations with them to tell them, look, this ordinance has passed and this is how we're going to apply it. We know that there's some contradictions here, but our legal advisors, most of the time we have trainers to do this, but we had to have legal advisors to go out and help our officers understand the complexities and the ambiguity that they might see in the ordinance. We're in a better place now because now we have had a full legal analysis of how to apply it. And we feel confident that the training and the briefings that we've been doing will continue, and we also plan to have it in our in-service training so that our officers understand, the will of the council.
That's great because one of the reasons why I really wanted you to be here tonight, I looked at the first, I guess, session with the city council when they were in committee,
Yes.
and I think the particular guilty person was Councilperson Green. She talked about the homicide clearance rates. Now, for those of you who don't quite understand what that is, that's the amount of homicide you're able to solve in a given year. So I think it was 51% for Memphis.
That's right.
And she said how bad that was, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm a pastor, and that's like taking the Bible out of context. You take lift one verse,
That's right.
and then want to run with it, but you don't look at what comes before and what comes after. Here's what I found out. The clearance rates across the country were around 80% 20 years ago. Now the national average is 54%. In many cities, I think there are about 5 of them, they're in the 30s.
Yes.
30, one was 32%,
Yes.
one was 36%, one was 38%.
Yes.
So if we're at 51%, maybe I'm missing something, but we're doing pretty good
We are.
in terms of the national average. But see, that's not the picture that was painted.
Right. That's not the picture that was painted. And we have had an increase in homicides. And so anytime you can still achieve 51% clearance rate and you're dealing with more homicides than some of the other major cities, that is more of an attribute for our homicide investigators in the work that they're doing than it is something to say that we are not where we need to be. And we always compare with the UCR guidelines, which is the FBI guidelines, and FBI guidelines right now is at 50%. They're saying that's clearance rates at 50%. So if we're at 51, we're right where the FBI's numbers are saying. And as you said, you've done your own research. So it's not that our investigators, and I think they take offense to that because clearing homicides is a heavy lift. And right now, we're trying to hire more people so that we can have more detectives so that we can have an even better clearance rate. And we're going to get there.
And to add to this in a different way, you talked about earlier community policing. And the people that are consistent listeners of this show know our church was broken into 3 times in a week. Church was broken into by young people. One young person that was caught. The other ones, they kind of know who they are because the police have been in the neighborhood. Matter of fact, they've fed some of these young people.
Okay.
One was 13 years old.
Yep.
And they were looking for food because they went all through the church. They didn't take anything but a blanket and then they clean out our refrigerator.
We're finding more of that.
Yeah,
More of that. And that tells you something right there,
yeah,
doctor, because we've had schools broken into.
yeah. Libertas across the street from us was broken into twice.
That's right. And now we're finding that they're not stealing computers. When you have kids breaking into schools and they're going straight to the cafeteria and they're stealing cookies or milk or, food, we have to question, the community has to ask, do we have kids that really just need to eat? As opposed to kids that are stealing equipment or computers and things for other nefarious reasons. And so we have some broader problems in our
Exactly.
community, and I think with community help, we'll be able to resolve some of those.
I just have a couple of more questions. I could ask 50 questions. But what I'm trying to do is to distill this down to the lowest common denominator because I want to make sure that all the listeners, and this is an education station, so by definition, our young people are watching this,
Yes,
all right, and others.
yes.
So let me ask the first question. And you can take it wherever you wish, and then based on our conversation, I may tag some others in. What is the future focus for the police department right now? You kind of alluded to it. You tried to describe it during that session,
Yeah.
and we won't even get into. Well,
Right.
we touched on that a little bit,
Right.
but kind of tell us what the future focus is.
So, every week I have a very comprehensive crime strategy meeting with my team. The leaders in the Memphis Police Department, colonels and above, and sometimes their support staff. In those meetings, what we do is we take a deep dive into crime in all 9 precincts. And instead of us just responding to crime, now what we're doing is we're starting to look at and take a more of an analysis in who is committing the crimes. Because some people are committing crimes over and over again. Last week, we talked about a gentleman who has stolen 30 vehicles in less than 4 months. So when you think about one person stealing that many cars, you can equate that to a small number of people that's driving crime up in our city. I call it the 20% of the people commit 80% of the crime.
Yeah.
And so now what we are doing is we are being laser focused, and that's what we're putting out. We will actually be launching this dashboard. We will be putting out our top offenders. And when I say top offenders, I'm talking about people who are committing serious crimes. I'm talking about violence in our community. Instead of us spending all of our resources, of course, we're going to deal with misdemeanors. But what we want is we want to get those individuals who are committing the most serious crimes, gun crimes, the trigger pullers, the gang crimes, the carjackers, those individuals that are running cars into our liquor stores and our beauty supply stores. Those individuals are who we're looking at. And they cross our fingers over and over again. We can arrest them Monday, and then they out on Thursday, and then we catch them again on Saturday night doing the exact same thing. And that happens more times than not. So what we are doing is we're putting together a repeat offender task force. Today I looked at some of the data. Some of this data is startling. When you look at a person who's been arrested 39 times in less than 12 months. 39 times.
Wow.
In less than 12 months. You wonder what happened after the first and second time.
Yeah.
Why is this person continuing? So what we plan to do is really look at maybe the top 100 people on our list. And not so that we can just look at prosecution, but look at the circumstances surrounding that particular crime. Is this somebody that needs to go to group violence intervention that has a chance for a different life? Or is this somebody that we need to rigorously prosecute? Is this somebody that we don't have enough on right now, but we know that they're involved in some of this violence, and gun shooting and stealing the vehicles? And how do we monitor these individuals? Are they on probation? Do they have warrants out on them? So part of this approach is being more laser focused on the individuals that are actually committing the most crimes in our city. This in itself not by itself, but this particular, initiative will help us get our arms wrapped around those individuals that we see over and over again every week. And it really keeps our officers' heads on a swivel because they can't keep up sometimes because they're dealing with the same individuals over and over again, and they're exhausted. So we're also working with our DA's office because those individuals, he's got a new program where he is doing a rapid process for prosecution. We're looking forward to that. People who commit serious crimes and are killing people in that community, they need to be prosecuted.
Exactly.
Bottom line. We can't save everybody. But there are going to be some people that we can send to group violence intervention who might need wraparound services, who might need their driver's license expunged. We have people who want to give them jobs, and see if we can convince them to take a different course, in life.
But now let me ask this question. I should have asked this earlier, but now in many cities crime is going down, but in our city crime is going up. Kind of talk to us about some of the reasons you see for the increase in our crime.
Yeah, and there are two different things that we see. We see young people who have an affinity for stealing vehicles, almost like a game. Anytime you have 12-year-olds, 13-year-olds, and 14-year-olds that are literally stealing cars and going on joyrides or even committing serious crimes. Now we have juveniles who are actually in possession of extended magazine weapons and Glock switches. It's a whole different phenomena for officers because now I'm dealing with a child with a gun. Because really, that is a child. If I have a 13-year-old granddaughter at home, I can't imagine a 13-year-old pointing a weapon or shooting at anybody in the community. But that's what we're having to deal with, and it puts us in a very precarious situation because we want to save our young people.
Yeah.
So here, I'm going to just put it out there. Permitless carry was the gift that I got when I first came to Memphis.
That's the
June
state
2021. That's right. June 2021. That's when I came to Memphis. That's when it passed. Permitless carry. And so now we are starting to see more and more and more weapons. People don't talk about the fact that my first year here in 2022, that whole year, we had broke violent crime records, in 2022. It took a good year to start seeing all of these guns on the street and in the hands of young people. And once that happened, it's hard to control when there aren't any real ramifications sometimes for violent acts. We don't have systems and institutions big enough to put a bunch of juveniles in. And parents sometimes aren't at home to keep track of our young people.
And let's make a separation right now. Now, let's separate the community policing and all of the preventative things for a minute. Policing, in terms of locking people up, in terms of catching people that perpetrate crimes, etc., it's reactive because you don't know when somebody's going to commit a crime.
That's right.
So what you do happens after they commit the crime.
That's right. It's already happened.
So when you create a climate to help crime increase, you increase the pressure on the police.
That's right. To continuously respond to those incidents.
Yeah.
And so part of our responsibility is prevention as well. But we have to get our community members to help and really trust. And people think that folks don't trust the police. I can't tell you how many crimes we solved because somebody picked up the telephone and they called us. We have a new system called Connect to Memphis, a camera network. That camera network, just knowing where ring cameras are in communities, have helped us catch a raper, a person who was actually pursuing young girls. It was 88 ring cameras in a community that help us pick up the vehicle, help us see the young ladies when they had walked up and down the street, and we were able to really narrow down and identify this suspect who was positively identified once we got him. But that's because the community said, I got a ring camera. Let me give you my footage. We need that type of input from our community members, and sometimes it's just low hanging fruit. It's not anything that you have to give us your name. It's just anonymous information. That's what our community can do to help us in resolving crime.
That was going to be my next question
Yeah.
because I think to some degree we have to work with you
Oh, absolutely.
because some of us as citizens know exactly what's happening in our neighborhood.
That's right.
And I know some of y'all are in this no snitching type mode, but the interesting thing about that is if somebody make you mad, you snitch. If somebody does something to you, snitch, but all of a sudden, when it can serve for the greater good, all of a sudden you want to talk about no snitching. There are brothers in jail right now because somebody snitched. So stop all of that
Yeah.
and start cooperating so we can help clean up our community.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, now, are there any closing remarks you want to share with us?
Well, I would just say that, our men and women in the police department, one thing that I can say about them, they are resilient. For us to have the level of crime sometimes in the city of Memphis and for them to come to work every day and they very seldom have downtime. We were so glad to see snow. A lot of people didn't want to see the snow. But believe it or not, they gave our officers an opportunity to just decompress a little bit. They didn't have to run back and forth from one call to the next. But, they're resilient. They come out and the thing that I tell my colleagues around the country is that my Memphis police officers, they going to get the bad guy. They might get away for a minute, but we're going to get the bad guy. We have had some high profile cases in the city of Memphis. And if it wasn't for the level of, work that we did with our partners and just being on top of it, everything from Young Dolph's killer to Ezekiel Kelly, who was running around the city shooting people and
Yeah, that
and
was
killing
crazy.
people. Right. That was very much like you know the random shooter that was. I'm trying to remember what city it was some time ago. But anyway, but we were able to really lock down on him and zero in on him using cell phone towers and all the other things that we use in technology to be able to get people off the street. And then we had the tragic death of Eliza Fletcher, you know, and if it wasn't for the manner in which we were able to track and get help from cameras and people giving us information, our officers were like, hound dog, we gonna get this guy, to do something so tragic. And then, as I said, we've had people that prey on young people. So helping the police department and helping us to do other types of intervention besides just lock people up. We arrested 27,000 people last year. But we've been arresting people for years, and that is not the answer to solve crime. We have other root causes of crime in our community, and it's going to take other partners and other sectors of government to help with that so our young people have a chance in life. Someone sort of mocked me when I said that we need to work with our fourth and fifth graders,
Why
and
did they mock you?
they didn't understand that if I work with the fourth and fifth graders, 4 or 5 years from now, when y'all do have another chief, they might not have to worry about the fourth and fifth graders being. We have to do something at the earliest ages of our young people's lives and stop pretending like they're just gonna make it on their own, and they will not.
Well, see, jail cells are determined by third grade reading levels. So
That's
why
right.
wouldn't you work with fourth and fifth graders?
That's right.
That seems smart to me.
That's absolutely smart. That's that holistic approach. That's dealing with root causes. That's making sure we have programs and we partner with communities that have programs so that we can help support, more positive interactions with the police and our children and community members.
Well, thank you for coming.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for being on Huddle Talk with Dr. Hutch. And if you have any initiatives, community initiatives,
Yes.
feel free, number one, to share them with us. And just also know you can come back.
I will. I'll be glad to.
Uh, Did y'all hear that? Make me puff out my chest. All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr.
All
Hutch.
right. Now, y'all, we're getting ready to leave. You know the assignment. You heard what she said in terms of helping the police department from the community. So your focus is going to be assist the police. Now, I know some of y'all don't want to do it. I know you're talking about don't snitch. But you snitch on your boys all the time. But I'm going to leave that alone. You need to help everything that is about this city, including the police. I'm going to repeat this again because I want it to stick in your mind. I noticed that some people have picked it up and run with it. I'm glad. The cavalry ain't coming. Superman ain't coming. Last time I heard, Batman and Robin had gained too much weight. They can't run anymore. And they're retired. And Alfred said later for y'all. So it's up to us. Oh, check it out. Black Panther lives in Wakanda. So he ain't coming. So the vibranium ain't going to help us in Memphis. I just want to help you understand it. And you have some people who say, get the National Guard. Now, let me explain something to y'all. You do not want the National Guard in here. You just don't. Trust me, you don't. So this is something that we have to do. So I want to encourage you. We're getting ready to leave, so you have the play. Are you ready? Are you ready to run the play? Man, tell that person at the back of the huddle to pay attention. Are you ready to run the play? All right. We're getting ready to leave you now. 1, 2, 3, break.